In tonight's news edition, Prime Minister Abdullah Mansour voices hope the third Arab-African summit in Kuwait will be a step forward towards ensuring further cooperation between the two continents. At least 10 soldiers are killed in a suicide car bombing in the Sinai Peninsula in one of the deadliest attacks in Egypt. And world powers have resumed talks in Geneva on a preliminary deal to curb Iran's nuclear program. Good evening and welcome to the news at 10. Prime Minister Abdullah Mansour said the third Arab-African summit comes as a continuation of the accomplishments made between the Arab and African regions, which must remain sound and solid. Delivering Jordan's speech at the summit, Mansour highlighted the need to implement the Arab-African Partnership Strategy, the action plan, and the need to capitalize the potential of the Arab and African peoples. He said the summit provided an opportunity to further promote cooperation between Arab and African countries. On the Palestinian issue, the Prime Minister stressed the need for joint action to ensure the establishment of an independent Palestinian state. He urged the international community to pressure Israel to end its unilateral actions and condemned any action that would undermine the effort to achieve peace and the two-state solution. On Syria, Mansour said that the spiral of violence and bloodshed requires the international community's support to solve the crisis. The only way to solve the Syrian crisis, he added, is through constructive dialogue that meets the aspiration of the Syrian people. Minister of Foreign and Expatriate Affairs Nasser Judeh participated in a meeting of the Arab Peace Initiative Committee held on the sidelines of the summit. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas briefed the committee on the latest developments in the Palestinian-Israeli peace talks. Judeh said Jordan is keen to realize the two-state solution, which envisions the establishment of an independent Palestinian state. Judeh added that the Israeli unilateral actions in Jerusalem and its holy sites not only violate international laws, but also threaten the peace process. The committee issued a statement in which it reiterated the need to continue negotiations and also held Israel responsible for high negotiations faltering along the way. During the meeting, Judeh discussed with his Arab counterparts Jordan's request for a non-permanent seat at the United Nations Security Council for 2014-2015. Minister of State for Media Affairs and Government spokesman Mohammed al-Momani voiced Jordan's condemnation of the terrorist bombings that rocked Beirut yesterday. Momani stressed Jordan's firm position in rejecting all forms of terrorism and violence and its motives and sources. The minister expressed Jordan's solidarity with the government and the Lebanese people in the face of blind violence. The death toll rises to at least 23 in yesterday's Iranian embassy explosion in Beirut, including an Iranian cultural attaché and hurling bodies and burning wreckage across a debris-strewn street with at least 146 wounded. Lebanese officials said security camera footage showed a man in an explosives belt rushing towards the outer walls of the embassy before blowing himself up. They added that a car bomb parked 2 buildings away from the compound had caused the second, deadlier explosion. The Lebanese army said both blasts were suicide attacks. A suicide car bombing killed at least 10 Egyptian soldiers in the Sinai Peninsula, one of the deadliest attacks recently. In a separate attack near Cairo, 4 policemen were wounded by a hand grenade thrown at a checkpoint, underscoring the fighters' widening reach. The Sinai bomb struck a convoy transporting the soldiers near the coastal town of Al Arish on the road to the border with the Gaza Strip. 35 people were wounded, and a military official and state media said it was a suicide attack. There were no immediate claims of responsibility. 7 bombs exploded across Baghdad, killing 23 people and wounding scores. The explosions took place as people shopped in crowded markets. Among the most deadly, a roadside bomb near a market in the mainly Shiite neighborhood of Sadriya killed 4 and wounded 14. while a bomb in a minibus in the central commercial district of Karada killed 3 and wounded 12. Elsewhere in Iraq, gunmen killed an off-duty bodyguard of President Jalal Talibani. The gunman broke into the bodyguard's house in Sulaymaniyah, northeast of Baghdad. The government has blamed Sunni Muslim insurgents linked to Al-Qaeda for the increased bomb attacks, which have mainly targeted Shiite civilians. A polio vaccination campaign continues in Syria as officials say the country's capital, which has had a high turnout for the vaccination, is free of the disease. Syrian officials said more than 2,000 children have been vaccinated against the disease since the campaign started in October. The campaign is held in the country in cooperation with UNICEF. The Department of Healthcare said the campaign reached many hotspots, such as Yarmouk camp, but armed rebels were preventing families from vaccinating their children in northern Syria. On the ground, 2 suicide bombers from Al-Qaeda-linked groups blew themselves up at an army post in the Syrian town of Al-Nabak near the Syrian-Lebanese border. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said suicide bombers attacked the army checkpoint in explosive-laden cars, killing and wounding several soldiers. The British-based monitoring group said the blast coincided with a rebel attack on the nearby government-held town of Deir Atiyah. Military groups said they had sent hundreds of fighters to the Qalumun front in recent weeks. World powers resumed efforts to clinch a preliminary deal to curb Iran's nuclear program during talks in Geneva. Russia and Britain exuded confidence that an agreement can be reached. Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei said Tehran would not step back from its nuclear rights and set red lines for its negotiators in Geneva. We get more in this report.
There is a strong chance world powers meeting in Geneva will strike a preliminary deal on curbing Iran's nuclear program. The United States, Russia, China, France, Britain and Germany came close to winning concessions from Tehran on its nuclear activity in return for some sanctions relief at negotiations in Geneva earlier this month. During a visit to Istanbul, British Foreign Secretary William Hague said the remaining gaps were narrow and the historic deal is within reach.
And the differences that remain between the parties are narrow, and I believe they can be bridged with political will and commitment. So this is an historic opportunity to build agreement on how to curb nuclear proliferation in the Middle East and potentially to set our relations with Iran on a different path. It is the best chance for a long time to make progress on one of the gravest problems in foreign policy.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said earlier chances of reaching an agreement were very good and the opportunity should not be passed up. As Western negotiators gathered in the Swiss city, Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei said Tehran would not step back from its nuclear rights and he had set red lines for his negotiators in Geneva. But he added Tehran wanted friendly ties with all countries, including the United States.
مسئولان خارجی وظیفه ماست همه دولت‌ها
I know and understand what it's like to try and run the country. It is a heavy task and they need support and backing, and I have helped and supported the government and its officials. This is an important part of the deal and is very clear cut. But the other part of the deal is that I insist the rights of the Iranian nation be preserved, including the nuclear rights.
Western governments suspect Iran has enriched uranium with the aim of developing the means to fuel nuclear weapons, a charge Tehran denies. Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Jawad Zarif has since indicated Tehran has the right to refine uranium but is not insisting others recognize that right. If an agreement is struck in the coming days, it is intended to be the first step on the road towards a broader settlement that would avert the threat a new Middle East war. Mohammed Al-Fuqaha for the News at 10.
Back here at home, Her Majesty Queen Rania met with members of Sadaqah, a campaign seeking to promote friendlier working environments for women through the provision of daycare centers. Attendees briefed Her Majesty on Sadaqah's strategy, which seeks to support women to maintain their careers and enhance their chance of assuming leadership positions. Sadaqah's team explained that implementing Article 72 of the labor law would not only contribute in increasing the percentage of female participation in the workforce, but would also aid in improving the country's overall national development. The world's first museum dedicated to the work of Faberge opened in St. Petersburg in what is being called a world event. More than 4,000 items went on display, and organizers stated that they had been working on the event for more than 10 years. The Faberge firm was founded in the mid-1800s and instantly gained fame after Russia's Tsar snatched up the eggs and jewelry. Many of the eggs were smuggled abroad after the revolution as wealthy Russians fled to Europe. Now the masterpieces are finding their way back. And we start with some NBA action. The Detroit Pistons held off a late charge by the New York Knicks to claim a 92-86 victory. Rodney Stuckey scored 15 of his 21 points in the second half, and Josh Smith added 19 for the Pistons. New York cut the lead to 4 in the final minute behind Carmelo Anthony's team-high 25 points, but it wasn't enough for the Knicks to win.
Put up jumper, puts it in. Carmelo Anthony knocks down. Right, he's giving him a step so he can keep him in front of him. Drives, nice feed to Josh Smith, and who is guarding Josh Smith?
Felipe Massa will draw his Ferrari career to a close at the Brazilian Grand Prix, a fitting venue for one of São Paulo's most famous sons. During the race, Massa twice took the checkered flag, but his victories were bittersweet. Few would begrudge the South American one final top 3 finish, but it is highly unlikely since the second half of the 2013 season has been dominated by the Red Bulls, with Lotus and Mercedes close behind. Massa has raced 138 times for Ferrari, winning 11 times and finding himself on the podium on 36 occasions. Barcelona striker Lionel Messi was awarded the Golden Boot as the top scorer in all European leagues once again. This was the third time the Argentine, who finished last season with 46 La Liga goals, has won the award. Messi first won the award in 2009-2010 when he scored 34 goals before earning it yet again in the 2011-2012 season with a record 50 goals. And finally, chilly conditions continue tonight with partly cloudy skies and a slight chance for local showers. Tomorrow, fair weather prevails in most regions with possible rain in the eastern parts. Winds will be northeasterly, changing to northwesterly. The Gulf of Aqaba should expect moderate conditions with northerly brisk winds and slightly choppy seas. Next are the lows and highs for tonight and tomorrow. To end the news, here's a reminder of our top stories. Prime Minister Abdullah Mansour voices hope the third Arab-African summit in Kuwait will be a step forward towards ensuring further cooperation between the two continents. At least 10 soldiers are killed in a suicide car bombing in the Sinai Peninsula in one of the deadliest attacks in Egypt. And world powers have resumed talks in Geneva on a preliminary deal to curb Iran's nuclear program. With that, we come to the end of tonight's news. I'm Nancy Khair. Thank you for watching and have a good night.